there, lovely journalism students. It is week 6, yay, of your e-learning, which means that we are almost done. If you can hardly believe it, I know I can barely believe it myself, but we are almost done with this e-learning. We're almost done with this quarter, semester, year. For some of you guys, you're almost done with high school. Holy cow. Okay, so that means that we are also at the point where it's quarter project time. So this quarter project is going to be your yearbook theme proposal. So in addition to whatever work you need to finish up from earlier this quarter, you know, some outstanding work some of you guys have, please make sure you're done. You also have a yearbook theme proposal. In other words, I'm going to be looking at these proposals for next year's yearbook. Your proposal could technically be chosen for what will be the 2020-2021 yearbook. Yeah, that's exciting. So yay. Now, some of you guys may have done this before, but I still want you guys to walk through and stay with me, and we're gonna go ahead and go through this. I will, in just a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and kind of walk you through all the terms and what's expected and what it looks like, so you know what kind of things that you're going to be able to put on your proposal. Also, just so you know, I will go ahead and upload some, I will actually upload this particular slideshow that I will show you, so you can actually review it, but then I'm also going to upload some of previous year's proposals, so you can kind of get an idea of what has been done. No copying. Come up with your own unique idea. All right. All right. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you guys just watch this video in full. You definitely need to watch this video in full. There's going to be a lot of information on here. So it may be a little longer than usual, but this is going to be a bunch of stuff on there. Then I want you to start brainstorming some ideas, like figuring out, you know, what kind of ideas do you want to see? Where's our school currently? Where's it going? Where has it been? Start thinking about things like, why do you like the school? Why do you come to school? Not just because your parents make you, let's be honest. There's reasons that you're okay with, you know, this school. You could, you know, because of school choice, there's a lot of other options you have. What is it about this school that makes it something interesting? Or what would you like to see improve in this school? Think about that. You can absolutely play up any of the other themes that are going on. Like, you know, obviously with 2020, there was a lot of schools that did a lot of, like, you know, visionary things, and, you know, 2020, think of eyesight type thing. A lot of things like that. So think about, you know, what means something to you. So start brainstorming your ideas, and then kind of narrow it down to your top 3 choices. And then from there, really start thinking, kind of flesh those out. What would those look like? I can guarantee you when you do that, you will land on something that you're like, no, I really like this. Now, for this assignment, you can absolutely work with a partner. Totally fine. But you must turn in all your work individually. So if Jane and John, those are boring names, so I'm going to do Jane and John. Jane and John are working together on this project. I still need a full turn-in assignment from Jane, and I need a full turn-in assignment from John. So what is a turn-in assignment? There will be 3 parts. Number 1, there's going to be essentially an essay, which would essentially be your a normal essay, guys. It's basically what you would stand in front of the class and present. It's basically, this is my theme, this is why I've chosen it, this is how I think it fits in with school, this is all that kind of stuff, this is how I think it should be divided, this is how I'm going to thread that theme through the creative part, through the rest of the book, the entire book. One of the things, so that's the essay. So you're going to think about, why is it relevant? Why does it matter? Another thing is that you're going to do like the visual side. So then you're also going to do a PowerPoint presentation, or something to that nature. If you don't have PowerPoint, you can do something very similar to it. There's a lot of other options, but if you don't have PowerPoint that ends in a .ppt or PPTX, you need to submit it as a PDF for me, okay? Because I probably won't be able to read it. So make sure that it's, basically one of the Microsoft Office components, that if you even have a school computer, all of that should be on there. If you don't have a school computer, or you don't have those programs, you absolutely can save a lot of those programs as a .pdf. So make sure you send it as that rather than anything else, because you want to make sure that you actually can turn it in and I can actually read it, because your presentation may be awesome, but if I can't read it, I'm not going to know. All right, so in your presentation, you want to make sure that you are not repeating what you wrote. You just want to do like the visual side of it. So if you talk about the theme being, I don't know, tiger stripes, for obvious reasons, then I want you to show me what the cover would look like. Give me the colors of that, like the actual colors, like find the right colors that you want to use. There's a whole bunch of things, and I will actually next week I will explain like all this different sites that you can pull off different things from. So we'll talk about it more next week. But you'll want to find colors. You want to find, what kind of things you're using, what kind of fonts you're using. There's all sorts of things that you can pull off the internet, off of your own, even just off of Word documents, off of all sorts of things. So you want to, how are you going to put tiger stripes through the entire thing? Thinking about that now, like what would you do for like the page numbers? What would you do for the dividers? And all of this will make sense in a second. And then, so that's your essay, your PowerPoint, and then the thing in the middle is all of your work. So after you've got a good chunk of your thing to your presentation, your pretty presentation, all the pretty stuff, the visual stuff, all the verbal side, basically all the words that it kind of further explains it and tells me why it's important and relevant. But then in the middle, I want to see all your work. So how did you get to land on this theme? So again, if you're working with a partner, great, put their name on everything that you're doing so that you pair it up. I should basically be getting the exact same thing from both you guys. However, if you're working individually, which is totally acceptable, great. Now, for some of you guys who submitted work, the similar thing last year, a lot of you guys worked with partners. You may now want to resubmit something similar that you did, or you may want to change what you did last year. You may want to alter it and say, hey, I liked it, but they didn't go with my idea for the fonts or the colors, so I'd rather do this. This is your time to essentially individualize and make it better if you want. So sometimes it's hard to work with a partner. Sometimes it's super easy. All right, just to give you some examples, just to give you a heads up, and I will go through this again towards the end to kind of tie it in, show you. This was the 2019 yearbook. You can see how it was. You can see the classics redefined. You can see how the squares and everything, how they did that. And this is what's called the spine, basically. So it explains, like, so what's on your shelf, for example, you can read it. And then the end sheets, which are these pretty colorful things in the middle. And then, look at this, see, table of contents. You see how they continued with the squares and the colors, okay? So all of that, and then even, for example, the different things, the colors that they use, they continued. The colors were a big thing in 2019. So, like, even see with the colors, the pink for the portraits, that colors was continuous throughout. So that was something just to go through. This was an interesting one. This one, if you notice, 1994. Yes, that's right. Well before any of you all were born. This was my yearbook from a million years ago. That's right. And so they did flight plan. Okay, as you can see, destinations. All right, destinations unknown, the Voyager. Yeah, that was the name of our yearbook, was the Voyager. So then how they did it. Let me show you some examples of how they tied in the theme. Oh, come on. All of my bookmarks have just fallen out. This, for example, was one of their dividers. You see how it looks like an old-fashioned map with passports and stuff like that? See how they did that? So that's the kind of thing. But again, yes, it's all black and white. It was cheaper back in the dark ages. All right. This was another one that we didn't really have. This is impressions. This is what it was chosen. So this was when I was actually teaching. We did see impressions. We did building foundations. Yep. We did a lot of things like that. No joke. See, we just continue with the foundations. So that's how we did it, because it was one of the first years of the school. So we just talked about basically essentially what the foundations were and that we wanted to build for each one. So we just kind of did it that way. So it wasn't really a big yearbook. There was a grand total of, no joke, like somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 people. So yeah, 38 total, guys, 38 total. I know I have some classes that are bigger than that, but that's all we had. So we did what we had to do, guys. So yeah, and it's not really the greatest, but hey, They were just starting out, and again, 38 people. So there's a lot of different opportunities you can see. There's a lot of different things you can do. This one was a really good one. This is not ours, but this was another yearbook, and you can see they had make your mark, and you can see the tire paw. It was pretty and colorful. And then their end sheets, for example, had like the whole like it looked obviously was that like from their yearbook, from their campus, and then they did a really good job on some of their themes where they had different let me show you some of these cool things that they did on here. One of the things they did was they continued that paw thing behind each of their classes. So that's the kind of thing you want to think about, is how you're going to continue your theme in each of your categories. All right, so you're probably going, I've just said a whole bunch of stuff. What does that mean? All right, so let's talk about it. So for the theme project, this is essentially what you're going to do. Let me go ahead and play. All right, so your theme development. Now, how are you going to find this theme? What are you going to do? What is that going to look like, right? You're kind of going, I don't know anything. That's totally fine. We've got this, guys. So here's what you're going to do. What is a theme? First of all, you want to think about that. It is basically, what do you want to feel like for this school? What is the whole approach that you're going to do for this particular year in the long history of Middleton? Again, we've been around. Middleton started 85 years ago, guys. Now, technically, this incarnation has only been around since 2002, but that's your lifetime. That is a whole lot of different themes, a lot of different thoughts. So I want you guys to go Google, figure out, what do you think about this particular school? So the yearbook records the events, basically what's going on. Essentially, yearbook is not what's happening right now. It's what has happened. You basically are in charge of archiving and keeping a record of everything that happens in the school for that particular year. So that's what I want you to think about. This is you're creating a scrapbook of sorts, an archive, a library, so to speak, to keep records. So 20 years from now, you're going, I remember that year. That's what we did, and this is what happened. You're going to absolutely bring people in and enhance the story. So the point of the theme is to not just tell the story, it's to tell it like consistently throughout. So you're not just going to go through and go, okay, like the Classics Redefined yearbook, for example, constantly had those squares and those colors in different places. And the Make Your Mark, for example, yearbook constantly had that little paw everywhere you went, in order to continue to reinforce the fact that this was what we were going to do. This is our focus. This is what we're going to do. Themes are discussed and portrayed in every single section. So we're going to talk about all the different sections there, but you want to make sure that you have a theme that isn't too specific, because it would be hard sometimes to really develop it into to kind of allow the creativity flow for each different section. So even though you want the section to go, it's one of the reasons you can use things like color. The idea with the maps, for example, was great, because you could start talking about, well, I want to go to this destination for this and this destination for that. That actually was a rather, creative, I thought. I looked at all my yearbooks, that when me growing up, and I thought the destinations one was the most interesting one. I especially because I actually like to travel, so that actually really worked for me. So just thinking about that, like that's something you can actually continue. It's not too specific, it's not too vague. It actually falls right in the middle. All right, something to learn. So you're going to look at that. Oh, see, this is what we're looking at here. It's called a double page spread, or just a spread. It's basically when you open a yearbook, the 2 pages, and basically you just prop it open at any point, that 2 pages, that's considered a spread. So essentially it's like when you read a book, it's what's on both pages. And so how we divide up the yearbook generally is each class or each club or each event generally gets its own spread. So we talk a lot in spreads, basically. All right, just to let you know, a bleed is just to know, basically, at some point the yearbook will cut off. And so sometimes we extend some of the photos into the bleed section, because we know they're going to get cut off. You just don't want to extend somebody's head into the bleed section, because you don't really want somebody with half a head. A caption, for example, is basically, it's just the copy. It's basically the 5 W's and an H. It's what is happening in that particular photo. It's all of the words, basically. A caption basically describes what's happening in a photo. It tells the story that is happening right then and there. And it usually, yes, by the way, includes more specifically who, because as you're looking through this yearbook in 20 years, you're going to go, I don't know who that person is. I don't know who the person is at all. Yeah, but you're going to want to know in 20 years. You may not even like them, but you're going to want to know who that person is. All right, a copy, which again, copy in general, by the way, is just the words that are in your book. This particular thing is referring to like the story. So at the beginning, for example, you're always going to, you're not just going to tell what's happening in each picture. You're going to explain to me what happened. So if this particular story, for example, is about the homecoming game. So you are the homecoming dance and the game and everything like that. So you're going to want to tell the story of what happened. So this is where we actually get into a little bit of journalism, where you really talk about like the news story. So this is where those of you guys who are more writers can really shine, basically. It includes absolutely somebody's quotes. It includes all sorts of things that are happening on there, as you can see as we'll go through. So a copy is basically the main story. The captions are what's happening in each of the photos, for example. All right, a cutout background, which is what that guy's doing. You see how he's being the football guy, for example. There's white space behind him, and he's like reaching for the ball there as he's trying to, I don't know what he's trying to do, but he's trying to do something over there. It's a cool photo, actually. So he's trying to do that, but you see how all that white space, basically how you do a cutout is in a particular program, and you basically cut out all the background just so you can highlight essentially what's happening. You can immediately, because there's so much white space behind him, your eye goes directly to the catch, essentially, or the throw, or whatever it's supposed to be. That's intentional. And so your caption, which is to the left, basically explains what's happening in the photo so that you know what's going on. But a cutout is a specialty thing. You don't want to overuse those, because then it just looks, honestly, it's sometimes kind of cheesy, but it is a cool way to kind of draw emphasis to something. The dominant element, there's always, when you look on a page, you don't want to make it like you see on this page. You see how many different size photos, you see the different shapes of the photos, but you always want to have one main dominant element. So it's usually a photo, to be totally fair. Sometimes it's like it says on here, a collection of photos. Sometimes it's a whole bunch, like a collage, but generally it's one big photo that's kind of emphasizing what's happening. What is the main point of what you're telling, and that essentially is the focus, and then everything else basically supports it. The external margin basically is all the white space around, and you want to make sure you leave the white space, because the yearbook will trim it off, but you do want to make sure that it does, you do have white space to leave there. So that is intentional. You do want to make sure you have a margin. And again, next year, if you guys do yearbook, we will talk about this more in detail. This is just more terms right now. All right, eyeline. All right, the eyeline, as it says here, is a 1 pica line. That's a one like little pixel, basically, that connects the left and right pages, all the design line. Basically, it's when you open a book, it's basically that right down the middle. It's where the spine is connected. It's where all the pages are glued together, essentially, where it's all threaded together. So when you're doing a spread, basically what's right in the middle is where generally your eye's going to go. Like, for example, with this girl, my eyeline here is not actually on the girl who's getting crowned and everything. My eye is actually on the girl who apparently was the queen before, okay, because she's pretty much right in the center of that. So, which is an interesting thought. I'm not sure if I necessarily like the picture, that if I'm being honest. It's an interesting thought. But what do you think? All of your design elements. So you see, however, the eyeline basically, which is straight down the middle there, you see how the copy, the main copy, for example, is on the left side, and there's only like one little caption, and then there's a whole bunch of pictures, a whole bunch of captions on the right side. They're nicely divided up. You never really want somebody's like head. You don't want text really following on that little divider, that middle line, that eyeline, because otherwise yeah, you're going to cut somebody's head off, or it's going to be awkward, or sometimes it's just, you don't want to do that. It gets messy. All right. The folio is simply the page number. That's literally what it is. Page number. A folio tab, however, is whatever comes out, kind of identifying it. Now, not every yearbook has this. Some yearbooks do not. Some of my yearbooks, I'm looking at right now, some of my yearbooks do, some of mine do not. This one does not. This one does not. It actually just has pause over it, which like literally like hand pause, like, you know, thing. Some of them do, and that's totally fine. Sometimes that works better. Sometimes that it doesn't, it kind of depends on what you do. So if you just want to do a page number, you totally can. Maybe that fits your theme. If you want to bring it out a little bit further, try to stretch it out, you can absolutely do that. You see where it says homecoming, student life, 24. So the next page will still be student life, homecoming will change, for example. So that's something you can absolutely, if you feel like that is necessary for your theme, make sure you put that down. Okay, guys? Okay, moving on. The gutter. Again, that's again part of the eyeline there, essentially straight down the middle there. That's the gutter. You just really want to make sure you got to avoid, you don't want to, you see how all of this, look at the page right now. Nothing's really cluttered together. It doesn't look cluttered. There's enough white space around all of these things that you don't feel like everything is just kind of clustered together. You can read everything. It actually works pretty well for what they're trying to do. Now, would I prefer different pictures? Yeah, actually I would prefer different pictures, but this is a real life yearbook. It's not one of ours, and this is what they chose. So this is just kind of going over that, thinking about that. But again, the girl who's crowning her, she's close to the gutter. Her her left shoulder is probably going to be cut off, but her face isn't. And none of the guys dancing over there, they're not getting cut off. None of the copy's going to get cut off. So you just really want to be careful with that. All right, a headline. This is, yes, absolutely. You can just do just homecoming. You can do volleyball. You can do seniors. You can do just that, or you can come up with something creative. Absolutely, there's all sorts of different things you can do with the headline. As you can see, there's the crowning Gloria. You know, crowning glory is a phrase. They did crowning Gloria because apparently their queen was named Gloria. Why not? That's a great play on words, guys. For my J1 students, you know that we've talked a lot about headlines. So some of you guys are really good at this headline writing. So this would be kind of interesting for you guys. All right. So just be thinking about this. All right. So thinking about, again, your spacing. We're thinking about all of this stuff on there. We talked a lot about this already. Your logo, again, logo, just like Starbucks has a logo, and baseball teams have a logo, and Middleton has a logo, and all of these things. You may want to continue to bring in the logo. Your yearbook itself may have a logo. So maybe it is the paw print, maybe it's the squares, maybe it's, the plane, for example. Maybe there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do. Keep that in there. Pika, again, is a 1/6 of an inch. It's a journalistic management, just throwing that out there. All right, type. We also know it as font, by the way. A lot of times type is basically the letters that you go there. So what kind of type or typeface are you thinking of? So you can see, for example, and you guys, we talked about this before, they're using a sans serif font, meaning without the little edges on it. They're also using a script, if you notice under there, bedazzled, but they're pretty much predominantly using a sans serif font. They're using a few different kinds of sans serif font, but they're pretty much using entirely a sans serif font. White space, negative space, make sure, again, you see how much white space in there, but it draws your attention to what you need to be drawing the attention to. So it actually works in your favor to have a lot of white space. All right, moving on. How do we develop a theme? First of all, we start with a concept. We start with this idea of what is a theme. Again, it can be destinations. I'm going to use that one consistently because I think that can be really expanded. All right, so then you want to start thinking about what do you want on your cover. So if you do this thing like destination, do you want to do a map, or you can do different ways to get there, or a path, or a pathway, or a door, or a window. There's a lot of different things you can do, and what do you want on the cover? And as you saw, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of covers. And if you go ask your parents or your grandparents what their yearbooks look like, some of them probably are super boring. Some of them may be super interesting. I can guarantee you one of them somewhere has a yearbook. Go look at it. It's fascinating. But what is it about the cover that makes it interesting? So when you first go in, you start talking about end sheets. So end sheets are basically that first page when you turn it in. In the last year's yearbook at Middleton, we had those bright pink sheets. At Make Your Mark, the other school, that they had basically a pretty view of their campus. Those are what end sheets. You can do just a solid color. You can do something cool design. There's all sorts of, it's endless possibilities. And again, if you were doing, say, the destinations, maybe you did a map immediately on the inside, or maybe like a old Indiana Jones travel thing where you can see the different destinations we're taking, and you can go academic, student life. We'll talk about that. All right, so your title on your last page. So the first page after the end sheets that you open up is your title page, and that is going to include basically the name of your school. It's going to be your first picture. The title page, for example, in this particular one was it was basically a cockpit, which was really cool because, again, it was destination. And it had the name of the school and the address of the school and what the year was and everything like that. And then the last page, and I'm flipping over right now to see the last page. The last page was, by the way, an ad for the school. That's not really a cool last page. To be totally fair, that's not a cool last page at all. One of the last page absolutely actually is often an ad. Another one may, for example, be your yearbook. Maybe it's a goodbye. Maybe it's a senior send-off, whatever it is. Whatever you think. How are you going to continue to tie it off? Maybe it's, again, with destinations, maybe it's picking up your luggage at the end of the trip. That's an interesting one. All right. Opening and closing. That is your opening and closing spread is actually what that is. So essentially, after your title page, what's the first thing you see? So in destinations, for example, it actually is the title. It is actually it is a dedication, who they dedicated the book to, and it is the table of contents. In Classics Redefined, the last one, it is simply just the table of contents. That is your opening page. The closing one that they had right before that was, pulling it up, it was actually the journalism page. So that's, yeah, it was the journalism send-off page. So that was essentially what they had. And you're more than welcome to use that. So you can use all sorts of things. There's a lot of different things you can do for that. And then the divisions, basically how we divide it up, it's pretty simple. There's student life, which is basically your clubs and all of the things that are basically what you guys do. There's the academics, basically anytime you're sitting in a classroom. There's your sports. That's pretty easy. And then portraits. Those are your four main sections that we did last year, or this year in particular, and that are generally done like that. So there's absolutely, how are you going to continue to divide up that theme for your sections? And then sidebars, those are little things that you continue with the themes. So maybe it's graphics, maybe it includes like information. There was one yearbook I saw that had all sorts of they were doing like an Instagram theme, so they had like actually pulled in kids' Instagrams on that particular subject. So they actually pulled in kids' actual Instagrams from homecoming, actual Instagrams from an important game, the actual Instagrams on portrait day. I mean, so this is the kind of thing on graduation. There's all sorts of things you can do just to continue to tie in your theme. All right. So this is an example that they have, for example, just going to go through like inside out, the idea of inside different things, sidings, out, side. You see, words are a great thing to do with that. You see how that kind of works. I'm going to skim through that really quickly. We've talked a lot about that. Piecing it all together, you could see how it's, so they're going to use puzzles. You see how they constantly use the puzzle pieces. There's all sorts of things that you can continue to do that together. There's some more examples, and you can, you can look through these more in detail on your own, but just know the different pages that you go through. What does that look like? How does that mean? You don't always have to do a title page. You can do something else, whatever that looks like. I really want you guys to focus more on the actual overall theme and the cover, because that actually is going to really tie in most of what you're going to do. So I really want you to focus on how you're going to kind of explain that. And if you have some ideas, especially those of you guys who are more advanced, please, absolutely use more of that. There's a lot of different ways you can use that and what that looks like. So feel free to go through and figure that out, and figure out what that means for you. Okay. Just really be thinking, though, you don't want to, again, you want to find that sweet balance essentially between being really vague, something like, again, with 2020, we had this idea of you know, with this idea of 2020 with being like, something visual, something very like looking through and seeing. And we found a theme. It's called, we did the inside look. So it actually worked out really well for us. But the idea of just like, seeing, we were really focusing on that. And that was actually kind of a hard one. That was almost too vague because you could go so many different places. But to be so specific would have been really hard, just to do, 2020 vision. It's like, well, there's only so much you can do with that. So you really want to find that happy balance between something that can be developed and used in a lot of different ways versus being super specific. So again, I want to just remind you what you're going to do for the project checklist for your proposal. So I want you guys to think. So you are going to need a cover and a spine, so that along the side. What kind of end sheets are you looking at? What title page? What would a theoretical title page look like? An opening spread, a sample of your divider, like, maybe using something like sports or student life. And if you don't have specifics, that's okay. You could just say photo here. You can do whatever you want. Okay. You can get super creative. Folio tabs, essentially, what do you want to do with the page numbers? Like, do you want it just to be like a symbol? Do you want it just to be, or do you want to pull it out and do the folio tabs? Do you want to do something cool with like the fonts and stuff like that? A closing spread, like, how do you want to end it? How are you going to like close it out, essentially? And then picking, your color palette. What kind of colors do you want to do? We went back to traditional colors this year. We did the maroon and gold, and then adding in some black and white to kind of offset that. But we really wanted to kind of focus back on going back to maroon and gold and finding, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Because again, we are maroon and gold here at Tigerland. So what are you thinking of? Or does another color fit your theme? That's totally fine. Then I want you to start thinking about your fonts. Like, what do you want to use for the headlines? Do you want to use the script, or do you want to use, a sans serif font, or do you want to use a serif font? Maybe those, absolutely all of those work. What are you going to use for your subheadings? So you may have a main heading like you saw with Crowning Gloria, but there may be another one underneath. It's like, a night to remember or something like that. Then what are you going to do with your body copy? What kind of font are you using? What kind of font are you using? A completely different font for captions? What does that look like for you? So that's what I want you to think about, essentially, when you're doing this. Like, you can see on this particular presentation checklist, that's what I want you to think about. So when you are doing this and you turn all of this in, and I put all of this, by the way, on your Etsy spreadsheet, so you should have all that, and you have the PDF that will be for this. So please, continue to go back, continue to refer to that. I know this is a long thing, guys, but I would have broken this down over a couple of days, to be honest with you, in our lessons, but I did not obviously have the time for that, and we don't have the luxury of that. So be thinking now, what do you want to do? I look forward to seeing what you have to do, and we may choose yours next year. And I know some of you guys are seniors and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Yes, your senior project, everything is due May 18th. So that you have to get it done for those of you guys who are seniors. The rest of you guys, it is due May 22nd. So that is that Monday and Friday of that same week. So in 2 weeks, essentially. So you have some time to think about it and develop it. If you have any kind of tech issues or anything like that, please let me know. I will make sure that that works for you. If you, everything needs to be submitted by the deadline. I want to see it. I want to make sure that you guys understood this. And I will go over next week for our lesson. I will go over a little bit more in detail and add some more things for it. But yeah, just use this week especially to start brainstorming and figuring out what you like, what you don't like, and then make sure you save all of your little bits, because I'm going to need you to take pictures of them and send them to me, so as part of your project. So make sure all of that's there. If you have any questions at all, you can leave it a comment below, send me an Etsy message, come to our Zoom meetings this week. You guys know when those are. We'll talk about this more in detail there if you want. If you have any questions at all, I would love to help you. Please, please, please do not hesitate to ask any questions at all. I'm here for you guys. All right. I miss you. Please catch up on your work. Don't fall behind. We are almost done. Finish strong. Have a great week, guys. I'll see you guys later.